Welcome to the HITea With Grace podcast, where we spill the tea on HIT. Today, I'm honored to welcome Anne Tumlinson, CEO of HITea Advisory and founder of Daughterhood. Thanks for joining me, Anne.
Thanks for having me.
So tell me a little bit about the career path that brought you to your roles today.
Oh, goodness. Okay. So I will just say my background, my passion is in public policy. So I started my career working in government, working on the Hill for Congressman John Lewis and from Georgia. And pretty quickly within my tenure at that office, I had the great fortune of being assigned to the responsibility for his work on the Special House Committee on Aging, which is now no longer there. But at the time, there was a House Committee on Aging. And then shortly after that, he was appointed to the Ways and Means, the Health Subcommittee for the Ways and Means Committee. So my portfolio very quickly became healthcare and aging, and I loved it. So that was in my early 20s and kind of set the course for my whole career. And maybe just for younger women, or younger people listening, I would say what's just funny how things work out in life. My very first job right out of college was actually answering his telephones. I didn't really set out to become a healthcare and aging policy expert or business expert, but I got a job with a cool person doing whatever they would pay me to do. And eventually over time, it led me to this area that I ended up embracing and loving for the whole rest of my life. And then when I went to grad school, back into government, but this time for the administration, I worked at the Office of Management and Budget, which is a very fun and exciting place to be. Eventually leaving there and starting in consulting. And I've been doing consulting ever since. I love consulting because you get to work on a lot of really interesting problems and projects and interact with lots of different types of organizations. That is a very stimulating. And I think
you really get to sit in the middle of all of the different things happening in the space and use the talents you've built up to support all these different companies.
Exactly. Yes.
So what do you do at HITea Advisory? Who are the type of people that you work with? And what is the Daughterhood?
Okay. Right. So Daughterhood, I'll start with Daughterhood is a community. It's an organization that's dedicated to fostering community among family caregivers, really with the purpose of helping them kind of to reduce the emotional and physical burden that they face in the roles that they play every day, taking care of their family members. So we have a couple of programs that we run that address that mission. And one is our marquee program, which is called Daughterhood Circles. Daughterhood Circles are anyone in the country can join a virtual Daughterhood Circle. They're offered at various times during the week, and we have different purposes for different comings together, but they are around, some of them are just like get together, talk, problem solve, it's peer support, and some of them are more oriented around a topic. So for example, we might do a topic on dementia, we might do a topic on long distance caregiving or hospice care, just things that come up. We've done a lot, I will tell you, a lot around grief. I think the community that tends to come, our community is made up of individuals who are pretty far along in their caregiving journey or facing very tough challenges, often with respect to dementia. So in our surveys of our community, we find that like a pretty high percentage are caring for individuals who are diagnosed with dementia or have dementia. And so that is very unique. There's a lot of grief that goes along with that, even before the person dies, because you're losing them in real time. We call that sort of ambiguous loss. And so we try to support people the best we can with those programs. And the other thing that we do, we have a podcast also.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
This is awesome. As a caregiver, I appreciate knowing about this community so much and am so thrilled we're all learning about it. So tell me about your podcast.
Yes. Well, I am not the podcaster. We have someone far more talented than me named Roseanne Corcoran. And she's a very kind of critical piece of our whole organization. And she runs our circles and she does the podcast and she She has guests on who have really interesting perspectives on different aspects of caregiving. And it's like very similar to the topics we do in our circle. So anything from how to deal with hospice or home health or the practical things. Like we do try to get to some of the practical things. But what we really find is that even if a caregiver comes to our community with a practical question, sort of like, how do I do this or how do I do that? Pretty quickly, what we unearth is that there are all of these big emotional and mental health challenges that really have to be addressed first before we can be helpful, practically speaking.
Yeah.
So it's like, and these things are like just feeling so overwhelmed, feeling really isolated, and feeling especially like nothing that you do is enough. This is not a role where you get to check a box or feel like there's an accomplishment, essentially. There's always something more you could be doing, and it leads to a lot of guilt. So, and then we try to get into a little bit of just our systems. And this is a good segue to HITea Advisory, because we talk a lot in Daughterhood about broken systems, because we find that our caregivers really internalize the broken system. They take responsibility for it in ways that's something kind of uniquely female. You run into a broken system and you ask yourself, what did I do wrong? As opposed to the men, I find, are a little bit more like, that is a messed up system. So I learn a lot interacting with the family caregivers in our community in Daughterhood, over in the sort of B2B business work that I do in HITea Advisory, which is HITea Advisory so Daughterhood is a nonprofit. HITea Advisory is a regular for-profit business. We are an advisory services and research firm based in Washington, D.C. Our mission really is to deliver to public and private healthcare leaders in the country the most objective research, deepest expertise, and bringing a lot of really creative ideas, though, that are very actionable and into action for them. And I would say our differentiator is that we are extremely expert in the kind of how caring for individuals with very complex care needs in our healthcare delivery system and how to pay for that. So we have experts on our team. So we have like 45 people. We have experts in value-based care, managed care, the public programs, Medicare, Medicaid, but also some employer-sponsored insurance and the exchanges. So those programs, and then the managed care organizations and the providers and the vendors and the tech companies and everybody that lives in the ecosystems that those programs essentially bring forward. And so we work with businesses and we work with foundations and we work with trade associations, and we have a big data analytics practice that fuels a lot of our work with objective data analytiks.
Fantastic. I mean, you guys are kind of approaching the hardest challenges in healthcare. So great job on that. I've heard around in the industry, there's been numerous policy attempts to fix the long-term care financing gap, and that's been a huge challenge in the space. What are some of the most promising or frustrating trends you've observed in your space now doing what you do?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So just for context and awareness, long-term care is like this, it's like this subject matter that few people really want to tackle from a policy perspective. And for whatever reason, I decided that was the area that I wanted to make my life's work out of. And so,
of course, because bringing people together from across the world isn't big enough problem.
So it's like, we have this wonderful team of people that are expert in many areas that I'm not expert in necessarily, but my expertise very much is in what are the opportunities for the public and the private sector to improve the way that we finance long-term care in this country, and ultimately leading to a better delivery system and experience for the family caregiver and the person who has needs. I mean, at its heart, long-term care is, I think, it's challenging. It's a really challenging policy problem, because ultimately the solution has to be insurance-based. In other words, for anybody who's listening who's not aware, we don't actually have a long-term care financing system in this country right now. We have a social safety net in the Medicaid program. Medicare does not cover long-term care, and people are often surprised. they get to this point in their lives, their mom or their grandmother needs a higher level, needs home care or assisted living care to help with all those daily tasks. They're managing a lot of chronic conditions or need supervision because of behavioral issues due to dementia, really challenging things to manage as a family. And it turns out there's no insurance for this. And so the solution is an insurance-based solution. The problem is that it's very hard to find an insurance-based solution unless you have everybody in the insurance pool. So that calls for more of a social insurance solution, and politically creating a new social insurance program under which everybody would be covered is challenging, because in our country, we love our social insurance programs once they're enacted, but we don't love them in concept because it feels like, oh, good, just another tax, another benefit for old people. Those kinds of attitudes just across the public and politically make it hard for policymakers. I would say the other thing too, though, is that it's like the secret crisis. Like when drug prices are nuts, everybody notices, oh my gosh, I'm going to the drugstore and I can't get my insulin, or the insulin costs way more because of with my insurance and without it, and this PBM and all the crazy stuff. Everybody sees it and they get mad and they demand a solution, and politicians respond to that. In long-term care, it's like by the time a family kind of realizes the situation that we all find ourselves in, they're often too overwhelmed in the moment to even think of it as a political problem.
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to just go lobby right now to fix this problem. You're in the middle of keeping someone alive. It's a true challenge.
Exactly. You're trying to keep, that's a great way of putting it. You're trying to keep somebody alive. And then when the caregiving episode is over, then it's often traumatic. You want to move on. It's not like very many people want to dedicate their lives then to that point to trying to get some kind of systemic change. And then the change itself is not really super clear what it could be. People don't understand like social insurance. That's very wonky, very technical. Like what? Mm-hmm. I think that the big problem though, I mean, there are many problems. Long-term care can bankrupt families, and more than anything, it essentially, the lack of a long-term care finance system means that we are heavily reliant on family caregivers to do most of the work because it's so expensive to pay for it privately. And I see a lot of family caregivers who are then in this very difficult position of having a full-time job, needing that full-time job, but also having a family member who needs full-time care, not being able to pay for that out of their pockets, but also not being able to quit their job. And in some instances, that's when, you can take advantage of the Medicaid program that your state runs. But every state is different. Rules, the things they cover, the providers, it's all very different. And navigating all of that is also a full-time job, just figuring it out. And I think what we're missing, in addition to a long-term care financing system, is we're also missing sort of the delivery system infrastructure, like what I call the place to go. Like if you're in this situation, many times the questions that we hear at Daughterhood are just like, I don't know where to start. I don't know where to go. Like, what do I do now? Who can I call? I'm just looking around on the web and trying to figure it out. And it's like, it's like every family, and we'll get to the tech in a minute, because like, it really is like every single family is designing their own delivery system within their own home by themselves over and over and over again. And so
it just happens to every single family, which is just insane. So where has the private sector stepped in with innovation? Where has it struggled due to the constraints of the current system, which are many, as we kind of talked about? And do you think there's a viable path forward for a sustainable long-term care financing model? And like, what would it take to get there?
Yeah. So on the private sector side, the private sector and the public sector side are very intertwined. And I think what I have seen on the private sector side, from a financing perspective, we've seen private long-term care insurance products really struggle and largely fail, in part for a variety. And I will just not go into there's a lot of good reasons for why that market doesn't work as a solely and exclusively private market. we have often in the policy sphere thought to ourselves, you know what would be great? Let's have a public-private partnership. So let's have some private insurance sort of backed up by a public insurance program. And most of the experts now on this topic, my colleagues, really believe that that is the most appropriate and best policy solution in kind of a vacuum. In other words, like intellectually, that is the right design that we should pursue. But again, it still requires new taxes. It still requires the public to kind of understand. And it's a hard thing to sell, right? Like public, private, what? So on the private insurance side, it's challenging. I would say in terms of tech solutions, I have witnessed and had the opportunity to get to know many entrepreneurs in this space who have really worked hard to develop technology-based enabled solutions to some of the logistical challenges that families face. So in other words, nothing we can do about the fact that there's no financing, but as you're in that home by yourself, setting up this whole delivery system, how can technology help you? And there have been some good solutions. The problem is that there's no great revenue model and there's no great distribution model. So, consumers, this is not the kind of thing where you're like, what technology solution I could go shop for in order to help organize my mom's medications better, and then I'll pay for it.
In addition to all the other things I'm paying for right now, it's tricky. It's tricky.
A step too far. It's just a step too far. So I watch these entrepreneurs look for other markets through which they can go to get to the family caregivers. So for example, signing up to be a vendor to a Medicare Advantage plan or to a senior living community or some place where you're already going to have people in this situation attached. And those kind of work, employers, and they're having some success, but it's tough. It's tough. It's not, you see this huge need out there and this huge problem, and you think to yourself, this is a great opportunity for a business, and it doesn't match up that well. It is a huge opportunity, but it's very challenging. And so I think that a big part of that reason is because we don't have a big flow of funds coming from an insurance program, that would essentially kind of force, I think, the market to respond with more infrastructure and more opportunities for vendors and solution providers to kind of attach to something. I said, it's like everybody's making all these Christmas tree ornaments, but there's no Christmas tree to hang them on. So financing is a really critical part of it. And the one financing solution, public solution, that I am more optimistic about, there are two, actually. There's two. So there's two that I'm optimistic about. One would be former Vice President Harris did propose adding a home care benefit to the Medicare program when she was a candidate. And it really resonated with a lot of people. And I think the reason I like it is because there's already a financing apparatus in the Medicare program. We already have the payroll taxes. We already have the Part B premium. We already have the general revenue. So you're not setting up a new tax. Now, it's still expensive and you still have to pay for it somehow. And that's challenging. But also people understand, you're adding something to Medicare. That's a thing I can get my head around. So I like that as a solution. The other thing I like is that states are taking this on more and doing creative things. Washington State is a good example. Everybody points to Washington State, but I think we're going to have more Washington States soon. And I think there's more the federal government can do, essentially, if it wants to decide, you know what, we're not doing this. But the states might do it. And if they do, how can we make it as easy for them as possible? And there are federal policies that we could consider that would help states just really be the locus of the long-term care finance. It's not ideal because it'll be different everywhere, but
either or both of those sound pretty good. So let's just do that. That sounds amazing. So I'm wondering, where do you see the greatest opportunity for maybe provider-led health plans to better serve some of these complex populations while maintaining financial sustainability? And how can those models maybe support family caregivers in the process before we get to that point?
I love that question. So just health plans in general, I have this theory that carriers in the Medicare Advantage program, let's just put them in they're sitting over here in like a little parking lot for a minute. Just to remind everybody who's listening, the first baby boomers are turning 80. So we have this, everybody talks about demographics. And yes, we all know that population's aging. But what's important is like right now, we're on the cusp of the population aging into the very old age, which is when we see much higher prevalence of chronic conditions and functional limitations and cognitive limitations. So if we go back to the parking lot, we get our Medicare Advantage plan carrier for a minute. What they need to wrap their brains around is that their future market share is going to be increasingly comprised of people with complex care needs. This isn't just some like, oh, these are the high cost, high need 5%ers. Like, no, like this is going to be who's going to be enrolling in your plan. So you have to have a strategy for not just for managing their medical costs, obviously managing medical risk, and carriers are already really struggling with that. I mean, I think we're already starting to see, the beginnings of them realizing that basic insurance risk-based management tools like prior auth and UM are not sufficient. They make everyone mad and they don't work. So we've hit the limit on that. So what are we going to do to really manage the population? And they got to go back to population health. We got to go back to value-based care. It's really hard, but we have to do it. And provider-led plans, I think, in some ways, here's my view. I think provider-led plans are not good at being insurance companies. So I just to pick on United Healthcare for a minute, because it's the biggest one with respect to Medicare, like they're a very good insurance company. They know how to operate insurance products. Providers know how to deliver care. But the thing is that what insurance companies are good at it's not working and it's not going to work. We're going to have to deliver care differently. So where providers have really struggled to operate insurance programs, like I think if they can begin to wrap their brains a little bit differently around what it is that they are trying to do with that insurance money and recognize the inherent strengths that they have in actually redesigning care delivery once they have hold of all this money, then there's kind of an endless set of solutions that they can contemplate to really better serve the population that is going to have functional limitations and functional decline and age-related functional decline, chronic condition-related functional decline. We know the models that work. Like we've been testing models for 20 years. Like we know what works. Primary care-led case management, care management, health-related social needs addressing, family caregivers. It's not hard, but it is complicated. So or maybe it's the other way around. I don't know. The point is we know the answer. It's just getting from here to there is going to be hard. But I think the provider-led community-based hospital health system, physician-based organizations participating in risk-based models from CMMI, Medicare Advantage are in an incredible position right now, and they should all be pursuing it. And I might also just jump off a ledge here and say, in addition to Medicare Advantage as a program and a product, Medicare Advantage has another part of the program that are called special needs plans. And the fastest growing product among those right now are called chronic condition special needs plans. We call them CSNPs. You may have heard of dual eligible special needs plans, which we call DSNPs. And institutional level, we have three types of special needs plans, but the ones that are designated for people who have chronic conditions, severe and multiple kinds of chronic conditions, are growing really quickly. And I think you're a hospital, you're a health system, you've got these people you can't discharge, you have throughput problems in your hospital because you've got all these people that know where to go. The best way to start to craft solutions around that is actually to craft an insurance product for them that will pay for the things that they really need. And it will keep them moving through the hospital, out of the ER, and into community-based solutions wherever appropriate and possible. That was a lot.
No, I want it a lot. So keep nerding out with me, please, Anne. They're fantastic. And I'm learning so much right now. It's amazing. So I'm wondering, as we kind of close out this first part of the podcast, how have you seen the industry and policy landscape evolve in recognizing the role of the family caregiver as it comes to whether long-term or any caregiver, really? And where do we still fall short and really need to make some serious change?
So I do think there's been a fairly significant awareness elevation of family caregivers in the last 3 to 5 years. When I started Daughterhood in 2015, it really felt like there weren't that many people talking about family caregiving issues, and that has accelerated. And a very exciting example of that is that there is a demonstration program that has been launched by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation called the GUIDE program, which is a program for people with dementia. What's significant is that it is for their family caregivers. This is a very major shift in the Medicare program to go from being a program that is very strict in its interpretation of of paying for benefits for beneficiaries. Like, you have to be a Medicare beneficiary to receive a service paid for by Medicare, which makes sense. But what the policymakers concluded after some research that they did was that in the case of people with dementia, we often see these dyads, which is the family caregiver so interconnected in that person's life because they are essentially serving as their memory and their brain, that it is when you provide services to that family caregiver, you are also taking care of that Medicare beneficiary. That is a huge mind shift that is very exciting to me. And I think probably what I would call the most important policy thing that's happened for family caregivers, honestly, of everything that's happened.
Yeah, that is huge. So more of that, right? I think we need more of that. And I love that whole mindset shift of, if we're caring for the caregiver, we're caring for the patient, and maybe that being part of evolving and changing these models to make sure they're meeting people in a time where they really need it, and supporting patients and in complex conditions. So fantastic. I want to switch over now to learn more about you as a human being and as a leader and as a CEO and just founder and all the amazing roles that you play from the career mind. But I'm wondering, what are things that you do in your personal life? You have a lot going on to work your best to make a difference and just stay on top of life and stay as positive as you are. You're like a total light. You're just like an energy force. And I'm so thrilled to have met you. And I'm just wondering, how do you keep that while you have so many things going on?
Well, first of all, I want every woman listening to this to know my children are grown and gone. So I am not parenting on a daily basis, which, although in the flip side, I'm older, so I don't have quite as much energy as I did when I was younger. I really, really have made a very concerted effort to make sure I have an active social life with other women outside of work. That was when I started the company. I mean, I really did get into kind of a bad place, like 3 or 4 years into trying to because I started Daughterhood with the idea that would be all I would do. And my consulting would just support me until I could switch gears. The consulting grew, the thing grew. It was a lot. And I realized I had sacrificed that soul stuff of getting just time with people you love to hang out and talk. And so that's been very important. I also garden. And I mean, and let me be clear, badly, not great. I'm not like that.
I'm also queen at gardening, not very well, but just enjoying the act of doing it. And when you do get something that grows and looks beautiful or tastes great, you're surprised.
Exactly. It's like, that is the right mindset. And it just being outside, just getting outside, being outside, enjoying, forcing myself I need to go take care of the tomato bush or whatever. So I do love that. And I think that just getting some balance, And I do exercise. I do try really hard to get out and walk and all the things. sometimes though, really, I just sleep until like 10 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Like I really will like treat myself like a queen. Like I'll be like, I'm going to stay in bed and somebody's going to bring me coffee and I'm just going to veg out here.
Right.
Energy
You have to disconnect so that you can re-energize. And it's like the Energizer Bunny from there on. So it makes a lot of sense that you would need to do that. And there's a lot of, I'm sure you've had a lot of obstacles that have come your way as you've raised a family and then raised now businesses and nonprofits. What are strategies that you've implemented that have helped you be resilient and overcome those obstacles to get to the next level?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know that I'm that resilient, to be honest. Like, I think I take things pretty hard when they don't go right and I personalize it. I do all the things they tell you not to do. But I have a lot of great mentors and colleagues and who help just provide context and perspective and reorientation. And so and a few things that people said to me early on that I just go back to over and over again, which are like, it's just not a fast or linear process to ever create anything. It takes a lot of time and it's harder work than you ever imagine that it's going to be. If you knew, you wouldn't do it. So by the time you're already at that moment, you're just like, it's like, well, what are my choices? Like get up and put my feet in front of each other and just keep going. And I would say like the toughest moments for me have been around the business were COVID, March of 2020, and actually this January. So now the uncertainty in the business environment, we're a public policy related, like we do a lot of business consulting, but it's all related to policy. So I think until we start to see some more evenness and the functions of government, it's challenging for our clients, hence challenging for us. And so I just try to remind myself, like, you can only do the best you can do. You just have to do your best. And then like the rest is out of your hands.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something we all have to remember. I think everybody thinks, oh, once you become CEO, you just have everything all figured out. And it's like, no, you have people surrounding you that remind you who you are, remind you the reality of the situation, and encourage you to just keep going, right? It's like, you can't do it alone. You got to have those cheerleaders in the corner.
Right. And I will say, I have also observed the thing about this particular role is that there is a lot of conflict just inherent in it. You're making contracts with people and clients, and you're sitting on top of an organization of human beings. And so there's just difficult conversations that have to be had all the time. There's difficult conversations, and the most difficult ones will flow to you if you're the CEO. So, and I'm not actually a particularly good at conflict. So it's been uncomfortable. And I'm just trying to manage that, especially right now. Like just, okay, this is the job.
Like, I got this. That's why I got the job, right?
Right.
I got this.
Here we go. So
yeah, I totally get that. If you could give any piece of advice to your younger self, like if you're looking back at your really young self, kind of diving into the world, what would you tell her and why?
Oh my gosh, I would tell her not to take things so personally. Like nothing is about you. Number one, that's the one thing. Number two is really you're going to have a much easier time if you focus on how to understand what the needs of the organization are that you are in and orient yourself around solving problems and adding value relative to what that organization and its leadership need, as opposed to like what you and your individual contribution need. Because I think it's like, oh, I'm doing this job and it's hard because of this or whatever, but it's happening in this much larger context. And now that I'm sitting in the role that I'm sitting in, I'm looking down on this organization and I can just see when people are really contributing to making my life easier, like just how, in terms of like just helping us achieve our goals. Like this is our goal. there's a big difference between somebody who's, you can tell, is really helping the organization achieve its goals and somebody who is very much thinking about their own self. And when I understand that, I was that person. But now I can see the value in the bigger picture thinkers. And I think I've learned a lot about, I wish I knew then what I know now, I would have just, I think, made my own life and other people's lives a lot easier.
Oh, so fascinating. So fascinating. So to finish this conversation off right, where can our listeners find you online?
So if they want to see the work that we do at HITea Advisory, which we do have a lot on our website and it's free. We have a lot of free resources. We have a state policy resource center. Anyway, it's very easy. It's HITeaadvisory.com. So www.HITeaadvisory.com. And then over on the Daughterhood side, it's daughterhood.org. So those two websites have a lot of information about the work that I'm doing, that organizations are doing, about me personally. And then I'm on LinkedIn. I'm like a LinkedIn person. So I always welcome connections and outreach over LinkedIn.
That's terrific. Now, before I forget, did you happen to bring tea with you today?
Oh, yes.
If so, tell me about your mug.
Well, this is my gardening mug.
Oh.
So this is my mug that reminds me it's spring flowers and happiness and sunshine and just being out in the garden. And so it often goes with me out there. I'm one of those people who carries my coffee mugs everywhere I go without a lid, which I saw somebody say on Instagram was like super badass, which made me very happy because I'm the person who's waddling out to my car with my open coffee mug, sloshing. But it just makes me happy. Like, I love this mug and it makes me happy. So it goes with me wherever I go.
That is too good. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And thanks for sharing your mug and your tea with us. We appreciated learning from you.
Thank you, Grace. Thanks for having me.
And thanks to you folks for joining us too. Check out the HITea With Grace podcast for more interviews with great guests like Anne today. Cheers. Like a Girl Media is more than a media network. It's a community. We want to meet you and amplify your voice and the voices of outstanding women innovating in healthcare. Interested in starting your own podcast or hosting an event near you? Connect with us online or in person. We're here to support and empower you.